Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Salma, and here I talk about all things related to raising Muslim children, building healthy Muslim families, and anything that goes with it. There was a question in the comment section from one of the sisters asking me to address the loss of Iman during pregnancy. And there was quite a few likes, which I'm assuming other sisters had the same question, how to address the loss of Iman during pregnancy. Now, I want to tell you a story, and then, hopefully you'll come to your own conclusion regarding the loss of Iman, and quote unquote, I'm putting it in, air quotation mark, loss of Iman. One of my friends called me a couple of years back, and she said she was quite concerned about her state. She felt like she was being quite ungrateful. She felt like, her Iman had gotten so low that she was not able to appreciate all the things in her life. She was doing hifz herself, and she had children, 4 children at the time. And she just felt like her Iman had gotten so low. She wanted some advice, how could she get back on track? And as she was telling me about her life, I thought she needed to get some blood work done. I thought this was not, I thought she didn't feel well physically. I thought something else was going on with her. So I kind of suggested, this might not be a lack of Iman kind of issue. This might be just kind of, hey, go get some blood work done and let's take it from there. SubhanAllah, when she got her blood work done, it turns out her vitamin D was super low. Her thyroid was out of whack. Her hemoglobin was low, all these kind of things. It was actually a surprise that she could get out of bed even, right? And so she started on a supplement regime. She's, she changed her nutrition. She's, went to see a doctor and these kind of things. And, within 3 to 6 months, she was feeling much better. She was saying, oh, I feel like a young girl again, subhanAllah. So I always tell this story to illustrate the fact that sometimes, we attribute the wrong things, and we kind of make the wrong conclusions, and then we say, oh, this is loss of Iman, or this is lack of Iman. Now, we know that Iman can fluctuate and go up and down, but often it's not really Iman. This is not an issue of Iman, but it's rather an issue of circumstances and your physical well-being, right? And a lot of times mothers are not in a position where they're taking care of themselves, where they are, going for regular checkups, or where they're paying attention to, they're paying attention to everything else but themselves, right? And then when they're failing to cope with their daily lives, they conclude, oh, must be lack of Iman, must be, I'm not patient because I'm a bad Muslim or something like that. And meanwhile, they're in really bad circumstances and their health is not well and these kind of things. So I suggest to kind of always go with the obvious first, which is like, hey, how are you feeling? This is not a lack of Iman kind of thing. Like, but hey, maybe you're tired, maybe you're exhausted, maybe, all these kind of things. So when the question comes up, about loss of Iman during pregnancy, a couple of things come to mind, okay? Now, I was working as a midwife many, many years back before I became a stay-at-home mom. I'm currently a mom that's homeschooling her children, so I'm not going to work as a midwife, but I'm always exposed to pregnant women in our community. And so where I see this idea of loss of Iman come up is in a couple of situations. And again, I'm saying quote unquote loss of Iman because I think this is just the difficulty of the situation. So number one, women are generally exhausted and pregnancy takes its toll on the body, right? Women are generally, once they find out they're pregnant, they get nauseous, their bodies are growing new lives, subhanAllah. So it just becomes very difficult to function day to day. Now, if it's your first pregnancy, you might have a hard time just adjusting to the new reality. But if it's your second, third, fifth, whatever pregnancy, if you have multiple young children, then it becomes even harder, okay? And so often our inability to function gets then kind of lumped together with like, oh, you're not grateful. Oh, you don't appreciate the blessings that Allah has given you, which is a wrong way to approach this. Rather, we should look at it, hey, this is a really big deal. I'm really tired. My body is exhausted. I need to rest, okay? I need to take care of myself. Or, as we mentioned in the previous videos, we need to have other people taking care of us, right? That hierarchical care, not just the self-care where it's up to us to kind of, get the scraps and whatever is left over, right? And so if you find yourself in a position where you have already multiple young children and you find yourself pregnant and then you're exhausted and you're tired and maybe you're nauseous and whatever the case may be, and then you kind of start thinking, oh, this is my lack of Iman, oh, I'm not grateful, oh, this is, I'm not accepting the situation. I wouldn't frame it like that. I would actually look at the circumstances and say, hey, can I get some rest? Can I get extra sleep? Can those around me help me out here, right? So that's the first thing, just the sheer exhaustion. And, we need to kind of really put that in perspective, what it takes. A pregnancy really changes a woman, changes her entirely. And so this is a big transition in our lives, right? The second part is that often a lot of women find themselves in situations where they find themselves pregnant unexpectedly. And again, quote unquote, unexpectedly. Anybody who is married and who is engaging in intimate relations should be aware of how pregnancies happen, and that this is something that comes with it, right? And so when women find themselves being surprised at being pregnant, this is often interpreted as lack of Iman, that they are not satisfied with lack of Allah's, that they're not satisfied with Allah's qadr, what Allah has decreed for them. And I go, again, there's multiple layers to this. If you find yourself unexpectedly pregnant, meaning you did not discuss birth control or family planning with your spouse, it can come quite as a shock, right? If you're not having any discussions regarding your family size, if you're not discussing with your spouse how you want to go about it, if you want to space the children, if you have a young child, for example, and you find yourself pregnant, it can be quite difficult to accept that. And that is then again equated as with loss of Iman, or you're not grateful, or you're not appreciative of the blessing, or you don't accept what Allah has decreed for you. We do accept all that, but it is still hard. It's a major transition, especially if you have a young baby already and then you find yourself pregnant. Oh, it's hard. It's just hard to accept that, right? And so sort of the prevention of that situation comes I'm a big fan of prevention, obviously. Now, not just of prevention of pregnancy, but prevention of all these kind of things. It's a lot of discussions, a lot of discussions as you plan your family, a lot of discussion. If you find yourself in a position where you, for example, have multiple young children, you need to have a discussion with your spouse. How are we going to handle this if we find ourselves pregnant? Are we open to the idea of adding, as Allah wills, as one might say, to our family? Or are we going to take some measures where we're going to space the children, where the woman is not going to be so exhausted, right? Where she doesn't have to be forced to, where the thing she's being told is just like, oh, accept what Allah has decreed for you. Of course we accept, but it's hard. It's hard being pregnant. It's hard having that toll put on us, right? And so if we find ourselves in that situation, we kind of put it as like lack of Iman, right? Like we say, oh, we don't, I don't have time to pray. I don't have time to make dua like I used to, because it's a major transition, right? And so I hope this kind of, redirection in your mindset can help you understand that this is a major time in a woman's life. Being pregnant is not an easy thing, right? Like we kind of assume because everybody just gets pregnant, and again, when I say everybody just gets pregnant, there's many women that are suffering with infertility, so they have their own challenges, right? And so we take it for granted that this is just something that happens, but we don't actually discuss the difficulties of it. And it's almost like in the Muslim circles, you're not allowed to, I don't want to say complain, but like you're not allowed to share your difficulties, because then the conversation will be shut down with like, oh yeah, but this is Allah's blessing. Allah has, be grateful for what Allah has given you. And then alhamdulillah, and the discussion finished. Like, it's not that we're not grateful, but we want to have a space where we can express how we're feeling, where we can express, I think many Muslim mothers have found themselves in a position, where they see that positive pregnancy test and where they're kind of stunned in the moment. We're like, oh my God, again, or this wasn't planned, this is not what I wanted for myself at this time, and then they're having a hard time accepting it, right? And then even if they accept it, just the sheer exhaustion, just the sheer physicality of being pregnant, right? That takes a toll. And so women are pushing themselves, for example, in Ramadan to fast. They're pushing themselves, beyond their means. And those are the things that, woman is excused from doing, right? And so often then a woman kind of gets this idea that her Iman is low because she cannot participate as much as she used to, right? She might not be able to read as much as Quran she used to. She might not be able to show up. And I did a video, how to do hifz with kids when you are pregnant and exhausted and tired, because I've been in that position myself. I had 6 children and I was pregnant multiple times over, and it was difficult when the kids were young, right? And so I wasn't showing up on YouTube during that time, right? Because survival was the goal. And so if you find yourself in a position of, being tired, the question here is not your lack of Iman, but the question is like, how can you get the rest? How can you get the help? How can you have that conversation? That's not that you are ungrateful. It's not that you don't want to memorize, but maybe something else is a priority in your life right now. So if you are breastfeeding and you're punishing yourself, for not being a scholar or something, this is, where we have a problem. I remember many years back, as I was breastfeeding my sixth child at the time, and I had a house full of children, I was reading on one of my WhatsApp groups, some of the sisters were sharing some articles, and somebody had shared an article about a sheikh in Egypt who was a hafidah, who had ijazat from like many different scholars, who had memorized books of hadith and these kind of things. And then the sisters were very down on themselves. They were like, oh, subhanAllah, we will never reach her level. Look at our state. Look at our lack of Iman. Right? And meanwhile, those were all mothers with extremely young children who were going through pregnancies, who were trying to keep them alive, so to speak. And I posted at that group and I said, look, I'm breastfeeding my 16th year in a row. I was breastfeeding for 16 years. If I can manage to read a hadith while I'm breastfeeding that child, that's a success, because me breastfeeding that child is the priority right now. It's not me becoming a sheikha. It's not me, pushing myself in many different ways. This is what Allah has decreed for me. This is where the acceptance comes from. This is where I can be grateful for the little things I'm able to do. And again, it's not little. It's a huge thing that you're able, to nurture a pregnancy, to nurture a new life, and that in itself is the job, right? And so we should not be beating ourselves up, by not, oh, how come we're not praying up at night? How come we're not fasting? How come we're not doing extra good deeds? This is your good deed for this season of life, right? I know a lot of sisters, for example, miss going to the masjid when they have young children, or they miss praying tarawih, but this is a season in life where you focus on these kind of things, right? And so if we're made to feel like we're inadequate for being pregnant or having young children, and that we're not measuring up to how much Quran we should be doing, or how much Ibadaah, or what are the things, what's our connection to Allah, we need to reframe things. The fact that you're pregnant and growing a new life, that is the Ibadaah, right? That is the job, and that should be valued. So if you need rest, that's part of the program, right? If you are exhausted, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It doesn't mean so as the sister from my story from the beginning, she was saying, oh, she thought, she was an ungrateful person because her husband had bought her a dishwasher and she couldn't even get up to load the dishwasher. So she thought, oh, what an ungrateful person am I? Look at me, I'm failing. Meanwhile, she was physically unwell that she couldn't get up and load the dishwasher, right? So pregnancy is a time where we should be nurtured, where we should get help from others. And so if we are just made to feel like, oh yeah, our Iman is low, we are not performing, we're not grateful enough, I think that's where the disconnect comes from, right? So rather than think, okay, my Iman is low, I'm not showing up the way I used to, or, I'm feeling disconnected, think of ways to nurture yourself. Think of ways to take care of yourself, and have that conversation with your spouse. Have a conversation about what is this doing to your body. I think many men are disconnected. They have not had this conversation where they need to show up and where they need to help. And this is part of your journey as a Muslimah, and this is your Ibadaah right now. All right, so I hope this helps, inshallah, and I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.